Hey everybody, it's Ben, and today we're going to be talking about The Letters Left to Me by Joseph McElroy. Now, this book is so beautiful and heartfelt. It's a lot easier than Pulse and Cannonball as well. And, for the stylistic purposes of this book, I've been kind of having a thought that McElroy kind of has a very modernist tendency in a sort of like pseudo stream of consciousness prose style. And I wanted to be careful not to misgenre him. However, after reading this book, it's very apparent that that tendency is there within him, because just by placing this book within the first person, this is one of the better modernist books I've read. Not that I'm super erudite in that field or anything like that, but I would place this pretty high on the list. It's not like so first person as like Ulysses, where it's literally the character's thought process, or you have the stylistic component like in Guignol's Band, where it's very short sentences. Actually, the sentences are very long in this book. However, you really get that heuristic side of modernism, in that he jumps from one subject to the other, to the other, to the other, and they're linked together. But it's just more that, again, stream of consciousness, that thread of an idea that keeps getting expounded upon, which leads to a greater understanding of like the characters and their life stories and what his thought process is through. The plot of this book is, as kind of like with Pulse, with Brain in a Jar, it's about a kid who gets a letter to him. But pretty much his father passed away, and his mom found a couple-month-old letter and addressed to him from his father, and he gets it. And slight spoilers, though, this is more like the kind of bone structure of the plot, but it gets reprinted out and it gets sent to his family, and eventually when he goes to college, it gets sent anonymously throughout his college as well. Like, it was his mother's idea, but the author of the letter and who it pertains to is kept anonymous. And it's just how that has such an impact on his life. Now, the central theme to this novel is the idea of coming into your own masculinity, the idea of the father figure not being present in your life anymore, and how you make that transition into that. But also the deformation of that, and how it's not so much your relation to just you and your father, but it's your relation to you and how others have perceived your father and what your role will be in his stead as well. And the letter in the book is actually just a beautiful metaphor for that whole thing, in that it's a personal letter only addressed to the son. It was only meant for him to see. But then, due to his mother and other family members, it just gets spread out amongst everybody. And now it's less about his personal relationship with his father, but how he is viewed as his father's son, and him trying to come to terms with it, in some ways trying to escape that, and almost trying to get the original intention of the letter, but it's so muddled because it's so spread out amongst everybody. And it's almost like Jung's idea of the imago, in that they are not seeing him, they're even not seeing his father, it's just a projection of what they saw in his father placed upon him. And later on in college, he even questions that, asks his friend, like, what do you think of the person who would let this get published? It's something that really daunts on him, and he feels like he bastardizes his father's message through allowing it to get reproduced like that, even though it's not really his fault or intention. It was placed upon him because he wasn't in a position of power at that time. Whoa, boo-boos! Another aspect of the letter getting passed around his family is that it subverts his role into going into being the dominant male figure. Because of that, because of the passing away of that, now other male figures such as his step-grandfather, his uncle, and later on even his dean to some extent in his life, all do actions that they think that they would suit and benefit the son. However, what in reality it just doesn't allow him to come to his own male being. A great example of that is that his stepfather, what they call Pops, wants to take him to like this weird log event where two guys try to knock each other off of logs, and he's like, cool, I'll invite my first girlfriend. And his mother says, no, this is only an invitation to you. So through those actions, it doesn't allow him to fully experience his first love, to fully embrace that and to have that time with her, which he eventually loses her. Another example, and this kind of goes into the idea, his relation to his mother as well, it's going to be a little roundabout, is that now, because seeing his mother lose his father, the dynamics between him and her change, and he has to take a bit more of a dominant role in that. It changes because he sees a shift from her from caretaker to grieving lover. She doesn't handle the loss of the father well, and she's not able to keep as well up to date on the day-to-day tasks because she's in that state of loss. He lost her lover. It's her major support role in her life was taken away from her, and her life partner is extinct now. And by seeing that, he's recognizing more of who his mother is, and he's more thinking about what the relationship of her father and mother was before they were born, and realizing, hey, that position of father and the roles of mother, that actually came much later in life. They were totally different people before that came through. And much like when you go into adulthood, you really start to see the flaws and the kinks in the family, and you start to see the more human characteristics instead of their assigned roles as parental figures or as uncles and aunts or even grandfather and grandmother. You learn more about them and their background and what they were like when they were your age, and realizing, oh, these are just people and they're still trying to figure a lot of stuff out. And going back to this version of masculinity, he kind of needs to be this prominent role for his mom. He really needs to take a step up there, and there's parts of him that want to do that. He wants to be protective of his mother as well, make sure she's happy. But his uncle comes in, and even though his uncle says, I can be a father for you, he kind of stays there, and his mother doesn't really want the uncle there. He doesn't want the uncle there. There's the part where he even tries to read a book to make it show that he's smart enough to his uncle. But, by trying to impose that fatherliness on him, it, takes that role away from him. But through the family interpreting the letter, it's also a bastardization of the father's ideals, because the father is not saying by any means for the son to fill his role, to take his place, that he can go on the stage of the father. In fact, what the father is saying, a lot of stuff is like, I recognize the faults in my life. I recognize I have a lot of regrets as a middle-aged man. I don't want to have the same things. I want you to be a better person than me. And what that shows is that having that sent to the family, now the family's trying to uphold the son to that image of the father, when that was not the father's intent as well. And it's a really sad thing, because that very personal, beautiful message to the son is now bastardized. And now he has to consult with that for the rest of the book and see which image of it is correct, or which image of himself through his father is correct as well. And also, just the father was a very smart, intelligent man. He knew Latin, all these different languages, made a lot of money, did overseas business trips. So he's a very difficult figure to surpass as well. But, in the book, it does show the son has the potential to surpass that by going to Harvard. He gets into Harvard himself, and, he's a very intelligent boy. He gets into multiple colleges. However, his father wasn't even able to complete Harvard because he got sidelined and he only took a few semesters and dropped out. So McElroy shows that the son has the potential to surpass the father, but unfortunately, it comes at a doubt when he's held to the image of his father. And when you're held to the image of something, how could you necessarily surpass it? I think a great quote that kind of goes on the themes again of the letter of this novel comes from page 130, where he's in a classroom translating German, and he answers a question that wasn't actually asked to him, but he thought it was. So the voice asks, what is our misfortune? The voice asks what it means to speak for oneself. And if it means to speak for others, the voice goes unchecked to require if the silence of not speaking for oneself could express the silence of speaking for others. And his answer is, I belong here. Meaning in that his place in the world isn't situated by his father. It also comes from him as well. And kind of like the idea of coming to your own masculinity, in that, hey, I'm here because of me. I'm earning this kind of keep I'm having. My place in the world is not solely based off my father. I carve a path in it as well. Another thing is that McElroy never actually shows the full letter. He only shows bits and pieces throughout the novel. And I think it's a really smart idea, because it just kind of gives it this gravitas. Like, our mind, kind of like not seeing the monster fully in a horror movie, our mind kind of creates what is left in the letter, kind of gives it, or if we can't even create it, we kind of think like, okay, this must be something very profound. Because if you write that out and you mess it up, it could lose a lot of its profundity in it. But one part of the letter that he actually talks about the love interest he has at the end of the novel, he doesn't sleep with her, pretty bad for him. But his father talks about the idea of endurance, which is quite funny, because I actually read the book Endurance about the ship Endurance in Shackleton. And it was a great lesson for me in my life, because it taught me that, in life, there's not a lot of things to fight against. You think Shackleton trying to escape Antarctica is going to be this huge grand adventure. Every minute of it is fighting against some elements, the odds or some sea lions or stuff like that, the wildlife. But in reality, it's just waiting patiently. And it's just waiting on an ice block, hoping you're going in the right direction and not going crazy. Which is a beautiful metaphor for life, in that really there's nobody really against you sometimes. It's just the systems that be and like the things that afforded you and not, and going through life and waiting for it. Sometimes it's just like the best thing you can do. And you know, to see that echoed in this book as well, with the father figure saying like, hey, you know, just the idea of endurance and how important endurance is, it kind of really solidifies the idea for me. That's more of a personal note though. Now this is such a beautiful book, and unlike Cannonball or Pulse, which was so experimental, this book kind of feels like when I was first reading the classics, like when I was reading Of Mice and Men, Brothers Karamazov, or even like The Dead by James Joyce, just those beautiful, essential classic novels just stuck in the literary canons. And I would put that up there with them completely. Even though it has that modernist bent to it, which might make it slightly experimental to some readers, it is such a solid book, and it's so emotional, has so many great implicit lessons that you can draw from without it directly telling you. And not only that, but McElroy does this beautiful thing that sometimes even authors that I love have a habit with, where he doesn't linger on something for too long, but he also doesn't make something too short at the same time. Each plot point, each thing just feels like the right amount of time. And in a 150-page book, just so densely packed with all these ideas, and just feeling like you're not like, oh my god, get on with it, or like, wait, what did you say there? It's just such a testament to the genius of McElroy. And after reading this book, even though I liked Pulse and I liked Cannonball a lot, Cannonball a bit more, but like I was really more admired for like the technical skills of McElroy. For this book, I'm really admired by the emotional skill and the morality he tries to convey through the text. And so far, and I might change my mind later, but I would definitely recommend this as a starting point with McElroy. It's such a beautiful book, and you'll get so much out of it. And yeah, The Letters Left to Me by McElroy, definitely check it out.